Welcome everyone. This is RGB Fox, and I am no longer I'm no longer a Vanquish Soul Canine player. As much as I love this deck has presented me with one too many issues for me to continue playing it, at least in the TCG. And what do I mean by that, right? There's a lot of innate weakness in this deck that the other decks that I would rather play do not have. But first, let's talk about its positives. Well, number one, if everything goes your way, turn one you have a almost near unbreakable end board, right? You have amazing disruptions through cards like Holly Sue, Mad Love, Raisin, and Valius in the main deck, as well as a big blowout card in the Snow Devil, right? And you also have some backup, such as Ripper, Release, the Masquerade, and manipulation. Well, not really manipulations, but field presence with Rocket the Vanquisher, right? Additionally, post side, as long as you draw well, your opponent, ideally has to pass on a very weak and minimal end board, which you can capitalize on. Unfortunately, the truth is far from what is ideal. Playing this deck comes with lots of negatives. Number one, it can break, and when it breaks bad, and you're often passing with no real safety regulation in place. What I mean by that is you end up losing because you don't play enough non-engine to support going, turn one, no plays, and then passing with protection. The amount of non-engine that this deck can play is very minimal because you need your attributes in order to be able to use these interactions, right? Otherwise, you're left there as a sitting duck. And while the canine portion of the deck can supplement you with multiple Earths and Darks, the important effects to use often rely on fire, such as Raisin Pop, Valius Pop, or if you need to summon Raisin from the deck or Jiaolong, you need a fire for Holly Sue, right? Otherwise, Earth and Dark suffices with these two cards, but these two require a fire in hand. And you might be asking yourself, well, you play plenty of fires, right? You play 6 Raisin and Jiaolong. Well, 6 of them are Raisin Jiaolong, and the other 3 is supplemented by the Ash Blossom. Maybe you have 10 or 11 if you play Kaiju or Kurikara, right? Which is a valid answer. However, you're often using these cards on the field, either Raisin by summoning it and utilizing its effect to search and then linking off with it, in which, you get it back with Rock, unless it gets negated. Jiaolong often as an Xyz material because it's a level 5 that you can use with Jokul or Izuna in order to make, Ripper, Nash Knight, etc. And then Ash Blossom becomes a no fires in hand when you have to utilize it against something like an Extravagance, maybe a Ketu or a Rahu, etc. Right? So cards like these end up providing no value to you. Whenever you require the fires, you end up losing more than you do the other ones, as the other ones can stay in hand for recovery, whereas your fire monsters are often on field or in the graveyard because you have to utilize those very special effects to continue the game state. Otherwise, you risk, just losing outright to your opponent's advantage without you being able to interact with them at all until what you deem to be the perfect moment. And that is another flaw of the deck. You need to play this deck very well. If you don't, you will lose more often than not. I am not a perfect player by any means. I know I would make mistakes. But that shouldn't deter people from wanting to play it if they really want to. Unfortunately, I think that is just a abject truth that no matter what, you're always going to be a step behind. Every other deck has more starters than this one, and every other deck has ways to play around going second, whereas this deck, going against a full Yummy board, hell, even going against a full Dracotail board, you can hardly do enough to be able to break through and establish your own field presence. Another risk of playing this deck is post-side, you have almost no chances to protect yourself from board breakers, whether that be Dark Ruler, evenly matched. You can protect yourself from Raigeki and stuff like that because of Snow Devil and the Vanquish Soul Start Field spell, but if they use an evenly on you, you lose so many resources that you end up with maybe 1 or 2 interruptions, assuming you have cards in hand to be able to continue playing as well on their turn. And at that point, you play into a thrust, into a talent, and then there goes your advantage yet again. For that reason, for those reasons I should say, I am choosing not to play this deck anymore. I think as Konami chooses to hit Mitsurugi, Raizio, and Malice, the presence and the strengths of board breakers are just going to increase, and this deck is not going to be able to keep up. Comparing it to a list from the OCG, here's another flaw that they don't have over there, and that is access to Max C. We don't have access to Max C. We have access to Fua and Perulia, but the thing that makes Max C better than those two is the fact that, well, it's an Earth attribute. And not only is it an Earth attribute, but that Earth attribute gets you other monsters and other attributes whenever your opponent special summons. In the TCG, it's easy for Yummy to play against a Fua and still set up a good half board. Whereas in the OCG, if they gotta play against a Max C, at minimum they're giving your opponent 2 draws. And at maximum, well, they lose the game. Whereas here, they can end on Snatchy, Minion, and a level 1, and then continue playing on your turn at any time. So, to me, Vanquish Soul, at a hindsight, while very strong, appears to be an overall bad deck. Now, who knows if this would change after the ban list? Because I think there is still a lot of options that you could put in the extra deck. That is sadly only filled up because Paradise is not banned. And Quinnery, while I think it's still strong, you know, at the end of the day, if you didn't have to play this card, you could have had options for 2 better cards in the extra. And that's my rant currently on K9 Vanquish Soul. But of course, I can't end the video there, right? So what are decks that I think that you should play over Vanquish Soul K9 if you were looking to hop into this deck at some point or another? I'll put some honorable mentions. Number 1, Mitsurugi Pure. I think this deck has fallen off the wayside after the release of Justice Hunters, but the deck is still very strong. It's able to play a ton of main engine to get to the end board that they want, which is typically an IP, Murakumo, Futsu, and like some amount of non-engine in hand, whether it be Nibiru, Ash, Impulse. And that's another card and another reason why I think this deck is super strong. Impulse. Impulse is just ridiculous. Like, wholeheartedly, I think this is the strongest card in the format in existence at this time. Post side, it's also able to access a wide array of non-engine in order to not only break boards but preventing your opponent from establishing. And unlike Vanquish Soul, it doesn't lose to board breakers as bad because, well, one, there's a lot of recovery with prayers and with Futsu, And also, they have an Omni Negate that they can search. So, yeah. The extra deck is expansive. You can play damn near whatever you want in there. And last but not least, I mean, it has an in-deck board wipe, right? It has options to be able to play Nibiru in the main as well, because tributing your monsters is to your benefit. And also, I like the fact that you can search a Kaiju. It's nice. The next honorable mention is going to be Mitsurugi Raizeel. This is basically playing Mitsurugi, but with a bit more power going first, right? Where if your combo goes off, I mean, you have access to a monster negate, you have access to multiple pops, you have access to infinite follow-up, right? So your end board ends up being stronger. You sacrifice a bit of non-engine to play a secondary engine in the deck. However, it's still relatively strong. Not a lot of people are playing it, but also don't forget, because this is a rank 4 focused deck, you also have access to Castel, which gives you access to Featherstorm, and you can work with the side deck a bit more in order to play going second, because you already have a main deck board breaker with X-Ray Zeal, utilizing cards like Aggregator and Sky Blaster, right? So this is my next honorable mention. Now, once those decks fall off the wayside, I think one of the options that people should look into is playing any variation of Dracotel. Unlike Vanquish Soul, in my opinion, this deck has a much better way to play going second, with both cards like Ketsu and Rahu being able to facilitate not only bodies on the field, but also disrupting the opponent's board with cards like Malulu, Pan, and Urgula, right? And also, because the engine isn't too big, you get to supplement it with other engines such as K9, Kashtira, and play a wide array of hand traps, shown on the screen here. And when it goes first, it has access to infinite recovery with Urgula, with the Arthalion, the Flame, the Horn. I mean, there's so many positives in this deck that I can shell out. But the best part of all is that I think that this deck, unlike K9 Vanquish Soul, plays better turn 0 when your opponent goes first than almost any other deck, because Phimena is a card, and Phimena changes the reality of you having nothing to start with versus being able to disrupt your opponent with Arthalion, popping cards with Gulamel, and having a board presence going second into multiple decks. It also has a really favorable Yummy matchup, so that's another reason why I really enjoy this deck. However, there are times when you will not draw engine. You may have a hand of like just hand traps, and even when you have Fua and Perulia, your opponent may not even play into it. So yeah, that can be a very key weakness, because for as many good cards that the deck plays to get you into your engine, you have just as many bad hands into it as well. So yeah. Number 2, Yummy Striker, or Yummy, right? Because I mean, Striker is basically a supplemental engine to the Yummy deck anyways. This by far appears to be one of the best decks going into this format, even though it's just 2 weeks old. After studying so much, if you are not playing Yummy or the other deck that I think is the contender for number 1, then you are probably behind. And I don't mean that in a meme sense, but I mean that in like a legitimate sense. Like, you may just be playing casually or for fun, which is okay. Don't let anyone say that you can't do that. But it is very hard to be able to play against this deck going second and expect to have a good time, right? The strength that Yummy has is, unlike every other deck that I mentioned, it has probably the most starters of any deck. Cupsy being the best one, but also Cookie and Lollipopo can facilitate the same thing. You also have access to Striker cards, which ends up getting you to the Cookie, or Cupsy I should say, and Obedient Schooled, which, yeah, leaves your end board a little bit weaker, maybe more susceptible to Nibiru. but it's just as potent. The recovery and the grind of this deck is amazing as well. And this deck only gets better in Doom of Dimensions whenever they get the Yummy Marshmallow and the Continuous Spell. Yummy Marshmallow being around also means that if your opponent banishes your minion, you get to get it right back, and it also, because it's a Yummy monster, ends up being another starter. And then, I mean, again, it gets to play as much non-engine as it wants. As you can see, this version has a combination of hand traps and board breakers, and you get to fill that up with more. And lastly, I think it has one of the best siding tools or side cards ever. Two of them, really. Access to Rivalry and access to Goes Match. Amazing cards. But if there was one other deck that I had to give the credit to the best deck that you should play this format, it would be Malice. Malice, like Yummy, has a ton of starters. Now, your best one is relegated to either White Rabbit, Dormouse, and Underground, or even Goldzark. But this deck, just like Mitsurugi, plays the best hand trap in my opinion in this format, which is Dominus Impulse. Dominus Impulse is damn near good in against every matchup except for like a Heraldic or Anamata Ryzeal deck. But if they're playing Ryzeal, just Ryzeal with Mitsurugi, or Ryzeal alone, you don't have to really worry, right? Dominus Impulse does more than enough. It also checks Holisu. It checks Rock. It checks the canine monsters like Jokul or Lantern. It checks Yummy Surprise. It checks Obedience Gold. It checks Phimena. There's a lot to say positively about this deck that I cannot express enough. It also has a in-deck, well, I call it in-deck, but it has a super accessible Omni Negate right off the bat in Allied Code Talker at Ignister. The end board is super hard to break. And even when they go second, being able to play cards like Fuelos and Perulia might check you enough to where once they start playing, you can't keep up with what they're doing. The amount of extenders this deck has is also incredible. And it's, again, you can play this deck in multiple ways, but I do believe that this is the hidden gem, this format. And I believe that YCS Anaheim, or not Anaheim, I think it's Vancouver this weekend, will have Malice finally take a dub in this current format, because I think its matchup against every single deck is amazing. Being able to use Heart Scripter or MTP07 to banish the minion field spell, I mean, there's not enough that I can say. Also, White Binder Graveyard Manipulation. I mean, there's so many positives that this deck has going for it in this upcoming format that it's hard for me to say that you should be playing anything else but Malice. So yeah, I do believe Malice is the best upcoming deck in this current format, and if you're not playing it, do yourself a service. And this is for people that want to play competitively, that are looking to get the next YCS top. You either play Malice or you play Yummy. This deck still has some negatives, right? It still has to play against cards like Lancia, maybe even Chaos Hunter. So it's not perfect, and it has many faults. But I think the positives outweigh the negatives by a long shot. And this is not a debate. But ultimately, this is just my own opinion. So feel free to disagree. So I kind of rambled on, but realistically, I wanted to just give out my opinion, as I do believe that if you're playing Canine Vanquish Soul right now and you're looking to be in a good competitive spot this season, you're doing yourself a disservice playing this deck. Now, I would like people to prove me wrong, because I'm probably going to sit on this deck for a little while, or I could get rid of it. I mean, it's worth a lot of money, right? But for right now, I don't foresee many tops with this deck, if at all. And I also don't expect anyone to win with this deck here. There's just not enough going for it. And for that reason alone, I do think that if you're going to play Vanquish Soul, you might as well play it pure. Thank you guys for coming to my TED Talk. And if you disagree in the comments, I mean, feel free to express your thoughts below. And if you do agree, what are you playing for this upcoming format? Thank you guys for watching. Peace. Have a wonderful day.